We're reaching the end. This is the closing session, and I think it's a very nice way to close it. This session will be, again, moderated by Dominic, so Dominic will not rest at all. And we have distinguished speakers that will join us and try to, first of all, wrap up, give a political view on the way forward, and try also to capitalize, as we said in the beginning of this day, as much as possible of what discussions have taken place until now. So without further ado, please, Dominic, you come and you introduce our panelists.
Many thanks, Yanis. Many thanks for this final introduction. As you have been hearing my voice a lot, I will try to limit it to absolute minimum for this final session, because we have some speakers that are in the rush to catch planes, probably some of you as well. We have some technical constraints, so we'll try to be efficient. Indeed, as Yanis said, this final session, we designed it to actually bring together all the discussions that we've had since yesterday early afternoon. We discussed many different things. We came out just of the breakout sessions, also discussing how to bring, among other things, how to bring research and infrastructures closer together. As you heard yesterday from our Director General, which was not really a surprise because you knew already that we are working in the direction. We are preparing a common renewed European strategy for research and technology infrastructures where we want to bring them together. And exactly this final session is supposed to give us a kind of a pathway and a final, I would say, stock taking based on all these discussions on in which direction we should go and which are the critical issues to be addressed. So without further ado, I would like to invite here to the stage with me to take one of the chairs, Elisa Rivera Mendoza, General Director at the Ministry of Science, Innovation and University in Spain. Elisa, please. Jan Hrušák, S3 Executive Board member and a long-standing expert on research infrastructures with a very long CV on the topic. Salvatore La Rosa, whom I know for quite a lot of years actually, been engaged in many different initiatives on the side of the Italian ministry and also on the side of different organizations related to research and technology infrastructures. Plamena Markova, Plamena, Chief of International Relations at EMBL, and Adam Babinski, member of the European Magnetic Field Laboratory Council. We have enough chairs. You have the microphones, normally quite a few. So, all right, we structured this along a few questions, so we'll try to make it quite interactive and be effective with our messages. Let us first have a look at the policy level or from the perspective of the member states, from the perspective of national governments. What are the key challenges for R&I policy to ensure synergies between RIs and TIs, and how to overcome these challenges? I mean, we face them at the EU level in the Commission. We see them when we are working with the communities. I'm sure you see them at national levels as well. And how to overcome them, indeed, both at EU and national levels. Elisa, if you could maybe start.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you also for being here till this moment. As you might know, we are also preparing an ERAC opinion on research and technology infrastructures. But I'm not going to speak on behalf of the member state because we don't have it yet. But we have been working for a long time on that, and we have also from the Spanish presidency worked also on that, the Belgian, the Czech, and I think that political orientation has been given on the ecosystem, infrastructure ecosystem. I would like to focus on the challenges, but more on the how to overcome it, on the opportunities, because I think this is why we are here. I think that this is very, the challenges we have been talking yesterday about it, and also this morning, we have this lack of a strategic framework for governance, dedicated funding, fragmentation, etc. So how to overcome that, and how to ensure these synergies between these different animals. So first of all, we would like to emphasize the need to optimize the role of TIs and RIs. So to enhance the excellence in research, innovation, and competitiveness, by improving access. I think that access and visibility is very important. For that, we need this mapping of TIs on sectoral and industrial needs, and of course, fostering skills and capacity building. Second, We need a more coordinated approach, a more strategic integrated approach between RIs and TIs, also ensuring a long-term transnational accessibility. We don't have that, and I think it's very important. Data sharing and digitalization is also critical aspects. Third, a strategic framework, governance framework for TIs. I think that this is an obvious thing, and we are also working on that on the ERAC opinion. Also to overcome this fragmented national strategy and the lack of coherence between these national strategies. Four, of course, financing. Financing is always a theme, and it's always a question. So how to ensure for the synergies to work on that? I think that is very important that that TRIs and RIs can coexist, but they are not competing on financing. And also we need to set this kind of setting clear criteria for financing TIs. This is very important. And five, and the last one, a clear legal framework also for state aid rules. I mean, this is a very important thing. We have also been talking about in the ERAC discussions, and I think that this is one of the key questions, state aid rules. So clearer rules and greater flexibility for strengthening European industrial competitiveness. This is my 5 points. Thank you.
Many thanks, Elisa. Really very sharp 5 points. Jan, you often emphasize you have many hats. So you have a Czech hat, but you also have the ESFRI hat, and you have the ERAC hat. So how do you, with all these hats, how these 5 points fit with what you think about that?
Thank you, Dominic. Also, I realize that despite of my many hats, I am somehow a single-purpose person. And the last 20 years I have spent only or exclusively with research infrastructures. So I am new in the field of the technology infrastructures, and therefore I have to acknowledge that you have invited me here because I have not much to contribute. I'm speaking from a very strange perspective, similar to that of Elisa, because I am here, I assume, representing ESFRI, which means I'm representing member states in a different configuration. And also I have the difficulty that we have not finalized the discussion on the relation of technology and research infrastructures yet. And so many things that I am saying are inspired in the internal discussions we have had in ESFRI, but with let's say, understanding that it's more or less my subjective perception of the topic. But what I like very much is the title of this panel, because I firmly believe, and we have heard that many, many times in the conference, that we are really closer to a common understanding that an integrated, sustainable, efficiently operating ecosystem of infrastructures, not only research and technology infrastructures, but I include here also the digital infrastructures, the e-infrastructures, and all the other structures that are related to innovation, are really forming an horizontally, cross-dimensionally, cross-sectorally interconnected ecosystem, and this represents not only a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for an integrated policy approach, and this can bring us really closer to improving, increasing, speeding up European competitiveness, as Elisa has been saying. So the idea of this ecosystem actually formed the core of a document that is almost forgotten, but shall be somehow rediscovered. And this is the ESFRI white paper from 2020, Making Sense Happen, where we made along this idea of an integrated ecosystem a lot of recommendations that probably are still valid. And when looking to the results and the recommendations from the expert group, as we have been discussing them yesterday, there is many commonalities, and I believe that reading and understanding how we develop based on common principles, and by respecting, of course, the differences of the different infrastructure types can move forward and make the system more efficient, faster acting, ready for let's say, supporting European competitiveness and the welfare of our social system. This is really a way where we shall spend some thinking on, and I would really be very happy if we could consider that this ecosystem approach is something as a basic principle on which we can build on. I have prepared many notes here corresponding to challenges. Most of them we have heard several times during the conference, so I'm not going to repeat them. I fully resonate with that what was said by Elisa, and maybe in some details I will come later in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan. Indeed, so the existence of the ecosystem is a basic principle on which we should work as an underlying one. Okay, Salvatore, I will come to you because you can bridge multiple worlds. You worked in Italy, in the ministry, at least on 2 or 3 occasions. You had a period in the commission, we were in the same unit for a moment. And you work now in the Area Science Park in Trieste, which is an organization, technology center, actually hosting infrastructure. So how do you see that from the perspective of the combination of the policy and more practical application?
Yes, thanks, Dominique. Thanks for inviting me here. Me too, I had some notes that actually I had to a bit re-elaborate, and then I will filter them and fly on a few things because of time and so on. But the main message, because we are talking at this moment about synergies between RI and TIs, of course, they start from a very different perspective, and policy developments are at completely different levels. We worked, a lot of us, for many years on research infrastructures, and yesterday we are, let's say, commonly tackling this frame of technology infrastructures. About synergies between them, I would say that was very interesting to hear the director, Maria Cristina Russo, yesterday, about the 5 areas of intervention that I would say can be extended as areas of intervention towards TI, but also RI, to make them converging, because they were fragmentation of policies and fundings. In research infrastructure, thanks to ESFRI work, the Commission work, member states work, and so on, we are a bit better positioned. But when 2 poles, they have a bit to converge, each one has to move a bit towards, let's say, the center. So we heard about limited collaboration among technological infrastructure. We can extend to collaboration between technology infrastructure, actually, and research infrastructure. Then we heard about, these are the 5 areas of intervention. So we heard about insufficient access. Well, we should probably think about an instrument to improving the possibility to access to technology infrastructure, to research infrastructure, and this a kind of horizontal instrument, and of course, especially considering the needs and the capacity of small and medium enterprises, like vouchers or something like that. Then, of course, one was about the not adequate governance framework. That is not easy. We discussed also today. And then the last one was technology infrastructure must attract skills. I would say that the synergy between research infrastructure and technology infrastructure can be triggered, can be enhanced also by mobility between of course, human resources, between research infrastructure and technology infrastructure. Why that? Because actually, what I think is that technology infrastructure, they know already how to provide services and technology development to solve some needs of the industry. This is not, let's say, a new idea, and actually this is also financed. The research infrastructures are pushed to do that. What I think also technology infrastructure, their environment can be enriched with a contamination with some research, because after all they have to know how they can use the state of art of the research, or at least the level of research that is necessary to respond to the needs of the moment. So this exchange of personnel can be an interesting instrument. I would also reflect a bit about the recommendations that we heard yesterday. One was about the definition of technology infrastructure. This is interesting because in some discussion today, some of us thought that the definition is too wide, me at the beginning and other people, and some people said is a bit too strict, me also, myself, in the second step. So the point is, some of us are coming from the experience of research infrastructures. The definition of a research infrastructure is quite wide, but then there are some specific requirements. When I was working at the Italian Ministry of Research, those specific requirements allow us to make a national roadmap for research infrastructure, because when you do a mapping, you need some specific criteria on base of which you can say, okay, yes, you know, and also some other criteria like impact or whatever. So the definition is very important. Now, is the definition too wide or too narrow? I will have to take a flight, so I have to take a decision. Is correct for the moment, because then it will be focused, depends on the instruments that we'll put in place. Not at the moment, otherwise we can take a wrong way. Then, of course, I can report about the recommendations that were made by the high-level expert group. I mean, they worked for some time, and I totally agree with those conclusions. I will take a bit of more your time for a specific thing that I think can be interesting. So, great synergies between RI and TIs. So, strengthening the industrial capacity of research infrastructures. I spoke a bit about this. And then trigger an increase of curiosity for the scientific know-how in technology infrastructure. Italy decided to put more or less 10% of the funds available from the Recovery and Facility funds available for research in two specific calls. So we are talking about 1.5 billion euro that were injected suddenly, rushing into the Italian research system. And we published a call for, let's say, a bit kind of 1 million euro for strengthening the industrial capacities of research infrastructures. Well, of course, we were referring a lot to the S3 roadmap, so a specific group. And then, what is more interesting for us at the moment, to trigger an increase of the curiosity for the scientific know-how, I mean, to make a connection between research and industries, we published a call of €500 million for setting up technology infrastructures. Now, Was it easy? But things are still ongoing, not in terms of selection of the project that were selected, of course, but the implementation. Now, the community, a mixed community, because we required a public-private partnership with industries, co-funding the, let's say, partnership. We required to commit for 15 years of, let's say, implementation of this. So we couldn't absorb this €500 million. Then we took some money and we put them in research infrastructures. So we used that money. And then this was very useful for some things that I said in one of the table I participated. So what is this? This is a public fund going to try to foster this synergy between research infrastructure and technology infrastructure. We heard this morning that public funding are necessary to ensure long-term, let's say, sustainability, long-term planning, and so on. And this is actually very true for research infrastructures. But I think if I would like to recommend a way how to use public funds, let's say, for synergies between research infrastructure and technology infrastructure, I would recommend to set up some horizontal instrument, like, for example, this mobility of people or transnational access, or on the opposite side, do that at a very high level for some European priorities, CHIPS Act, I mean, just for European priorities that are making Europe. And this is also valid for the previous one. So the horizontal, let's say, activities that will make Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Salvatore. You started bridging to a second question. We'll come back to that with other speakers then. Before that, Plamena, no, but it's okay. Plamena, please, now I would like to turn more to the facilities, to the organizations that host the infrastructures. So at EMBL, you have quite a bit of experience with working with many different facilities, many different users. So how do you see that from an organizational perspective, this synergies coming out, playing out in practice?
Yes. So maybe listening to everyone, and today it's very difficult to come up with something particularly new after all of these discussions. But I do feel a little bit bipolar here, because I represent an infrastructure, a research organization that is 50 years old. And in its mission, in its foundational mission, was to deliver discovery-driven research and technologies. And to do this in a virtuous cycle, in a way that also can then, of course, engage with academic users, but also serve industry and definitely deliver innovation. So we never truly, I mean, we have been, as EMBL, been part of a definition, if you wish. But if we need to go down to the basics, introducing new definition means that we ourselves would need to find a new way of talking about ourselves. All of these big infrastructures like EMBL, like CERN, like others, who very much engage on both fronts, both on the research, on the technology, both with academia and innovation. And I think it's really important moving forward to appreciate the assets that Europe has, and to learn lessons from these infrastructures that could be completely transferable into the field of technology infrastructures. Now we're talking about collaboration between the two. I think, importantly, in order to collaborate with someone, you need to know that they exist. So my question would be, and my somehow plead perhaps would be, for more, and this is a good effort today, and we need to continue, but for more visibility on indeed who are the research infrastructures and who are the technology infrastructures that we want to support, we want to enhance, we want the users to be aware of. I think there's great value in raising visibility on both fronts, right? Because I'm convinced that there's many industrial partners or many SMEs and so on who would benefit from coming to a research infrastructure, as we label it. They just perhaps don't know about it in different corners of Europe. Same could be true for users of research infrastructures, which today we think perhaps would not be interested in a wind tunnel. But thinking in biological terms, why not explore how viruses spread in such a condition in a wind tunnel? I mean, researchers are curious, and I think we should be very careful in creating two defined pillars that don't have very seamless connection between them. So this is, of course, part of the challenges, right? How to ensure that the overall community of users, because they don't care what you label something as long as they can access it in a meaningful way, are aware so that there is synergies and there is complementarity rather than some sort of unhealthy competition for users or unhealthy competition for funding or unhealthy competition for political visibility. So for me, these are some of the challenges, and the best way to address them is indeed through perhaps introducing some trust-building horizontal initiatives where we know we have needs in terms of trained people. Research infrastructures have an incredible need, and I'm sure technology infrastructures will have the same. In terms of, thinking about AI, some of the challenges of today, surely both research infrastructures and technology infrastructures would have to think about this, and it could be thought in a concerted way. So identifying some very clear kind of collaborative points and then piloting it in order to build trust between the two communities, and perhaps really making sure that everyone, the users, understand that it's a wave, it's a seamless wave that comes from one to the other for the benefit of the whole ecosystem in Europe. So for me, this is the perspective that I bring. I could never bring a different one because of how EMBL is set up and what our mandate is, to deliver research, technology, services, and to work with everyone, with the communities of academicians and also innovators.
Thanks, Plamena. The building of trust is, I think, crucial. And again, EMBL is a particular organization because it's an international organization with that mandate, but there are also many national organizations that also at the outset have this dual mandate that are working on both fronts. Adam, I would like to turn to you. You have a lot of experience with research infrastructures primarily, but also you come from the university, and universities tend to host different types of infrastructures for different purposes.
Exactly. Thank you for inviting me here. Well, it's very difficult to add anything reasonable after so many interventions. Very important. But I would like exactly to say a few words about one of the areas which actually were spotted yesterday, and these are talents. One thing is the mobility. One thing is the training of people involved in research and technology infrastructure. But if we are going to think seriously about the competitiveness of Europe in a perspective, we should work with, I would say, relatively young people to affect their mindsets, get them ready to cope with challenges in industry, in academia. I'm happy to be involved in several initiatives also by European Union, Marie Curie-Skłodowska actions, support building up such people. But I still believe that we should think more about the education of those specialists, the staff who will engage both in research and technology. So these are this is, I think it's very important meeting point between the research infrastructures and technology infrastructures. Both of them originate to some extent from academia. They were trained so well by defining, for example, one very, very, very important, I believe, thing would be to define the sort of skills which should be provided by the university to prepare people for their careers in several environments. People are very important because we can support infrastructure, but my perspective is that without people it's very difficult to do anything.
Focus on the people. This is one of the strengths of Europe for sure. So, all right, let's go back then a bit to the incentives and support measures at the EU national level. What kind of activities do you think could help? Maybe I will start with you, Plamena, this time. What kind of activities would help? Now you come from an organization, so you have potential of collaborating with other organizations, may have other infrastructures where this is maybe not happening. Do you miss something? We can help in one way or another.
Yes, I mean, I'm sure that my co-panelists will focus on various aspects. I wanted here, however, to take an opportunity to make one point. The research infrastructures that, and again, I'm talking perhaps, let's say first for the major ones and then of course the S3s, but the way they were created, because it was a creation a long time ago, they had a particular focus, right? They were quite Western focused. And very quickly, in the past decades, it was understood that in order for, indeed, for the research infrastructure to be able to deliver, but for Europe to be as inclusive and competitive, more countries need to come on board. So for me, same is true. So we learned the lesson of inclusivity and bringing countries on board from all across Europe as an important lesson. And I think the widening measures, right, are part of this initiative. I think same needs to be true and stands true for technology infrastructures, which perhaps will emerge initially in certain countries that have a very well-defined and strong tech basis. And we should not, going forward, forget some of the lessons that research infrastructures learned in bringing countries on board early on. And technology infrastructures have the opportunity to learn fast, to be inclusive, and of course, for yourself, for the Commission, to put measures for engagement across countries so that a technology infrastructure doesn't stay isolated in a country and only the regional kind of ecosystem can benefit from it. So this component of bringing everyone on board, being open and inclusive, and making sure that if there's an asset and an investment, the whole community of member states can truly participate and build. So measures that strengthen this element, I think, would be very valuable. And of course, this can be access, transnational access for research infrastructures. This was very important. But everything that the research infrastructures learned on that component, I think, needs to be and could be easily transferred so that tech infrastructures don't need to relearn the lesson in a painful way, in a way. So maybe just focusing on that. There's many more, but I would leave it to
No, inclusiveness is a very important point, and indeed it's one of the areas where research infrastructures have really built up the European research area. I remember we've done analysis of the first S3 roadmaps, first 5, I think, or 6, depending on, I don't remember exactly when we did the ERA monitoring report, but we actually found that the fact that they exist widens from one year to another the scope of their activities, and more countries are actually joining, and with that more and more countries are actually connected to the core of the scientific competencies and the core of the scientific excellence in Europe.
Sorry, Dominic, to interrupt, and just to mention that this goes back to the talent, right? The talent we need to tap into for research infrastructures and technology infrastructures across Europe. We cannot leave anyone behind, especially in the world that we live today.
Elisa?
So following a little bit on what Plamena has said, I think it's very important those incentives as these horizontal measures focusing on talent, but also some sectorial measures. And for example, some industrial policies can also build upon the EU CHIPS Act, where you have this kind of pilot lines, and where also we can consider it to this collaboration. As it has been said, I think it's very important first of all, to collaborate, to know who are your partners, and for that we need this mapping. So I think we have different incentives, but this legal framework, this governance framework, and financing not only horizontal measures but also vertical, sectorial, critical technologies that are fundamental for Europe that are going to be very important for the future, I think.
Prioritization. Yes. So that's prioritization reconfirmed. That's great news. I think we all spent quite a lot of time also in that conference, also yesterday, speaking that prioritization is important. And indeed, when you consider technology infrastructure and the scope of all the technologies, it's quite obvious you cannot take care of everything. You need to see where we can find our strengths. Jan?
Yeah. Meanwhile, I have found my notes from a very recent. Meanwhile, I have found my notes from a very recent S3 workshop where we have been discussing in course of the needs or considering the needs, whether and which direction S3 shall change. Also, my notes on the research and technology infrastructure ecosystem. But as I am quite, let's say, far in the role here, Plamena has meanwhile taken away my regional perspective, and the cross-sectorial perspective was taken away just now. So I'm speeding a little bit up before giving the word to Adam, because what we have seen, and we encountered that as very important, was really the missed opportunity at the interface of the knowledge triangle of research, education, and innovation. And we still believe that limited talent mobility and the fragmented skill development in research and technology infrastructures can be made more efficient. There could be some schemes developing skill buildings or initiatives for, let's say, training researchers or industry professionals. And one could think about, for example, research operators, technicians, engineers, mobility schemes from one to another infrastructure. And this would allow and facilitate closer collaboration, because the best knowledge transfer is through people communicating and speaking with each other. That's something which we felt also in S3 in our discussions that is worth to be promoted and upskilled a little bit. I have had also a very general statement, but as said, it appeared many times in this discussion, and this is the fragmentation of the ecosystem. And there were several thoughts developed during this conference. I have been very carefully listening to them and still do not understand that. And the crucial word here is governance, because obviously my understanding of governance is entirely different as it resonates here in the conference. And therefore, let me just say that I believe that there is a lack of strategic oversight to the full infrastructure ecosystem. There is a lack of coordination of policies. We are now starting at the European level, but the national coordination shall follow very soon. There shall be also a qualitative cultural change in the infrastructures themselves, because, I mean, they have to open up at least the minds, or at least in principles. And the thing that I am addressing here is more philosophical, but absolutely fundamental, because we are seeing not only a fragmentation, but also an erosion of this ecosystem, where every second day we have a new type of infrastructure appearing. And notwithstanding, I mean, these infrastructures are somehow in the need to emphasizing their uniqueness. And they are arguing with differences and needs to contribute to the system, but the linkages between these subsystems are very, very weak. And I think we shall come from the policy perspective with a unifying guidance, very light guidance, but a strategic, smart alignment of different policies from the EU level down to the national, or from the national perspective up, depending what the most effective way in a concrete situation is. But this is not governance. And this shall be clearly understood. And without that, without understanding that we shall build on similarities, on common principles, common understanding, we will have difficulties to achieve the goal, accelerating the technological development in Europe, because then it's really, as Plamena said, not very important whether the services are provided by a research or by a technology infrastructures. The effect counts. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam?
Well, still it's very difficult to add anything reasonable after so many important contributions. But first of all, I'd like to say that actually I'm quite excited being involved in one of those centers of excellence or rather competences related to CHIPS Act. I think this has a potential of building up the ecosystem, and especially it's as far as I understand, there are 3 institutions in Poland which are parts of those pilot lines. So maybe this would broaden a bit the landscape of the infrastructures. The other thing is, earlier today we were able to see this age figure provided by like people working in CNRS, and 27 years. It's really impressive. I am afraid that well, it's not the case in all research infrastructures, and I would say that there is a real problem of especially technical staff, people who are very skilled, but unfortunately they are getting, as all of us, older, and there is not much of interest to join those infrastructures for several reasons. So I'm getting back to the question of talents. I don't know how to answer that issue, but I believe that without really putting more young people to the system at some stage, well, there will be no sense of talking about any infrastructures without people.
So we need to adopt a long-term perspective, strategic perspective on skills development and on talent development to ensure
I believe so. We need to look at. I don't know. I mean, I thought that maybe it's reasonable to make similar figures, similar plots of this average age of the personnel in technological and research infrastructure across Europe, and I'm afraid that the picture would not be very, very bright.
Thank you. We need to finish in 3 minutes. So what I would like to do now is, Salvatore, a very targeted question to you based on the Italian experience that you mentioned. Because that was not, you signaled that it was not easy. That part on technology infrastructures was not easy, was money left, and then they were transferred, etc. So were there some particular areas where you saw that it actually worked, or were there some surprises where you thought it may work in some areas and it did not? But very shortly, and then I would like everyone else to
So I can answer to you with a specific example that I am tackling now. So where I'm working now, so it's a public research institutions where we have, let's say, inside the concept of the capacity of the research infrastructure, the willingness to develop a technology infrastructure. We are managing a scientific and technological park. We have an high performing computing. So we are trying to put all of this together. So research infrastructures and technology infrastructures, they are an innovation ecosystem. In our institution, we are trying to build, let's say, a kind of small innovation ecosystem inside to ensure also the sustainability of what we are doing. We heard this morning some of the 5 area cases, and one was clean hydrogen. So what we are doing is we are using the let's say, digital infrastructure that we have as a joint enabling layer between research and technology infrastructure. Research infrastructure, in our case, is, let's say, a microscopy capacity, microscopy-related capacity, and also the fact that we are, let's say, we have some capacities, and this is also, let's say, can be seen as a research infrastructure related to data analysis, data engineering, and in these kind of things. And then the technology infrastructure is a technology infrastructure related and focus on hydrogen, clean hydrogen production.
Okay. So that's a good example, actually, of one of the areas. It has come through also some of the user needs analysis that we've done with the expert group.
And the last few words, the idea is to build up a digital twin of this technology infrastructure to provide to industrial users answers to their needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Final statements, takeaways, what you would like the audience to take away about the synergies. What are the important things that we should focus on at the level of the Commission when we develop the strategy? And then I will pass the floor back to Yanis. Plamena, I will start just from the left to the end, and we'll wrap up.
Very good. So from my perspective, I mean, Europe has never been successful building walls instead of bridges. So we're here again. We should, especially now that we see the complexity of the world we're moving into, to oppose or to continue with the language of basic versus applied, innovation versus fundamental, technology versus research, could be incredibly detrimental to Europe's assets and Europe's talent. So the message is to just make a continuum of everything that we have here in Europe, of all of our strengths, and support it politically and funding-wise in the most appropriate way.
Thank you. Salvatore, one sentence from you.
So just, let's say, disseminate at large as much as we can the feeling that we need to do it with this ecosystem. We need to do it, and we have the willingness to do it at different levels. Pass, in particular, the message to the SMEs and the investors that actually technology infrastructure can reduce the financial risk towards going to the market.
We have the need and the will. And that's already a very good start. Elisa.
So as a member state, I think that is just to point it out that it's a clear need for a EU strategy and policy on AI and TI, that we didn't have it yet, in order to foster this joint ecosystem and to bridge this gap between the excellence research and industrial development to close the innovation gap. That is very important.
Great. We have the need to act. Wonderful. Thank you. Jan.
From my perspective, I fully resonate with that what Plamena said, what was now said by Elisa. I mean, my message would also be, because we have to proceed faster, there is no time for repeating mistakes that were done in the past. We shall learn from the past and create a future-oriented system, which again goes back to that what was several times said here in the conference, but digital is not only a keyword. I mean, this is the future. Artificial intelligence, this must be intrinsically included in the system. So what I am pledging for is to extend this concept of the ecosystem to all kinds of innovation-related infrastructures.
So inclusiveness also on the ecosystem level. Adam.
Well, last but not least, hopefully, once more difficult to add anything reasonable. So I would just finalize with saying more focus on people.
Great. And with that, we focus on the audience, and the audience, please focus on our panelists with a round of applause. And I pass the floor back to Yanis. And personally, I also thank you very much for your patience in hearing my voice. This is the last words that I will speak at this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you, Dominique. Thank you very much. I know that you might have some planes to catch, but now we will just very, very quickly we have our conclusions. And without any delay, I know that my director, Maria Cristina Russo, is already online. So I will ask the colleagues here to connect here online so we can listen from Cristina the final conclusions from the side of the Commission. Cristina.
Thank you very much, Yannis. Thanks, Dominique, and good afternoon, colleagues. Again, I regret that I was not able to be in person at this important conference. My colleagues have informed me about the very fruitful discussions that you had this morning, and I just learned now by connecting important words which are urgency, need to act, and also need to get it right. That is what I would add. I think that, as I mentioned yesterday in my second intervention yesterday afternoon, it is clear also from the discussion that took place today that there is a broad support for the EU to act, to have a strategy on technology infrastructures, which will be fully coherent with the work that we have done at EU level on research infrastructures. I was very happy to hear that many of you during those 2 days have really highlighted that research and technology infrastructures are not separate entities. This is why they have to be dealt together in a strategy that deals with the main issues to be tackled. Which relate to strengthening the ecosystem in a holistic way, promote investment, funding, work on increasing the accessibility of those infrastructures, promote the international dimension and attracting talents. And here again, I would like to recall the link between the infrastructure, be them research and technology infrastructures, and the policy development that were presented earlier this week with this Choose Europe in Science conference and follow-up action. Then also what for us, has been very important to hear is about the governance, the importance of revamping a governance system, which while taking into account the differences between research and technology infrastructures, with the caveat that a clear distinction cannot be made, is comprehensive and deals with the overall infrastructure dimension. Important also for us was to hear that it's essential to learn and trust the work that the key research infrastructures that we have in Europe, such as, for example, CERN, EMBL, have done, what they do represent, and built on that. I would conclude being more focused on the technology infrastructures, the need to develop clear criteria for identifying technology infrastructures at EU level, and then based on those criteria to map the technology infrastructures so that we can then include those mapped technology infrastructures in this strengthened action that we want to inspire at the EU level. And I use the word inspire not by coincidence, because this has to be done with the stakeholders and obviously with our member states. I will not be longer because we are really running out of time, and I excuse myself because in a few minutes I will have to disconnect. Just I would like to recall the next steps. The next steps relate to the fact that we look forward to the results of the call for evidence on this research and technology infrastructure strategy, forthcoming strategy, call for evidence that will be running until the 22nd of May. Then we also do look forward to the opinion of the ERAC, our member states, within the context of ERA, which should be delivered by mid of May. I also would like to say that there will be a specific S3 conference in June, which deals with the research infrastructure side of the matter. And we will pull all those elements together and prepare our strategy for boosting up research and technology infrastructures at EU level. On the date of the strategy, I will not be able to give further details now, because this has to be seen in light of the very busy schedule that we have at EU level. But we heard very clearly the call for speed action, and we will be as speed and as quick as possible. I would conclude by giving a warm thanks to all of you. Sincerely, I regret not have been there, and I thank also those of you that wrote me some messages. For those of you that I couldn't meet, we will meet bilaterally or at the next occasion. I want to thank, obviously, the current Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union, and also the Łukasiewicz Research Network for the support in the organization of this conference. But please let me also give a special thanks to my colleagues who have done a great job for this conference, Dominique, Guillaume, Panagiotis, and Yannis. Thanks to you all, and have a nice trip back.
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you very much. And I think that you already mentioned that we have another host, our dear host, so the Łukasiewicz Research Network, and of course the Polish Presidency. And I would like to call Rafał Łukasiewicz, the Director of Research and Innovation of the network, to just give the closing remarks. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think Christina already said everything, and as we are very far from the schedule, so I would just take one sentence that we heard: build bridges, not walls. I would say build infrastructures, technological, especially infrastructures, in the next years, that we can really make our economy more competitive. And I think this is the most important message from this conference. And at the end, I would like to thank again for you for coming here. It was a great honor to Łukasiewicz Research Network to organize this conference together with Cristina Russo team, especially Dominic, Guillaume, and Panagiota, and of course Yannis. And I would like to also thank to the Polish Presidency of the Council of the European Union, and especially to my team, who are sitting over there in the back, so please give them a big applause for all this job done here. Thank you very much. Have a safe trip home, and see you in the next occasion. Okay? Thank you. Bye.